Hi there, I'm Janelle with Lasting Impression Horsemanship, and today I'm going to be going over the way that I lunge my horses, and it is going to be very different than what I typically see. I guess mine's more of a way that I get my horses to collect up when they're lunging, and I focus more on their biomechanics as they're lunging and using their body correctly as they're lunging, and I can get more focus on what their mind is doing and making sure they're paying attention to what I'm asking them to do versus just having them run around in a big circle around me and trying to tire them out, which is what a lot of times I see happening when I see people lunging their horse. The horse is usually looking to the outside, whinnying to other horses, basically running around in a circle without much purpose, or that's really productive if you ask me. So when I see that happening, I really want to ask those people what they are trying to achieve when they're lunging their horse, if they even know what the purpose of it is, if it's just to try and tire them out, get kind of the edge off of them, or if there is another purpose that they're trying to achieve that I'm just not aware about. I know why I do it the way I do, and they have their own reason for the way they do it, I'm sure. There's more than one way to train a horse, just put it that way. Not one way's more correct over the other. Both of them work, and that's perfectly fine. This is just what works for me and what makes sense to me, and the results that I've gotten that seem to do a good job for me. I can use my time a lot more efficiently. A lot of times I will just start in a very small circle around me, and it'll start in like a walk and then just a trot. So I'll do a lot of walking and jogging and trotting, and they're going to be in a rather small circle because I want them to be in the correct body frame and to be able to get used to using their body in the correct way and build their muscles up in the correct way, and then eventually lead to be able to canter in the correct body frame. And eventually, once you get them doing all that correctly, everything else kind of just falls into place there. So this is Brecken here. He's a 3-year-old warm blood draft cross that I have, and he's what I would call a left brain extrovert for sure. He's extremely intelligent, but he likes to kind of get into stuff and get in trouble. He's just very personable, and I will kind of demonstrate here what it is I do when I go ahead and lunge my horses. So if I were to have him stand here and face me, all right, just stand here for a second. All right, so if I start with my horse facing me here, what I'm going to do, and this is the biggest thing that I kind of notice people do when they ask their horse to lunge, is they will go ahead and they'll take their arm and they'll pull it way out to the side like this, and they'll ask their horse to come and start lunging around them like this. So if I go ahead and I were to ask him to lunge like this, and I pull my arm way out to the side like this, he just took a step way into my circle there and completely dropped his shoulder and came into my space there. So that isn't what I want to teach my horse. I want to teach my horse to hold his shoulder up and hold his body up, and to make sure that he is going to stay in the correct body frame. So when I do this and I start asking him to start lunging, what I'm going to do, all right, back up, buddy. What I'm going to do is, if he's facing me here, I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to point in the direction I want him to go, but I'm going to point just in front of where his nose is going to end up. So say I want him to go to the left here, instead of pointing my hand way over here to tell him where I want him to go, I'm going to point directly in front of him. And you see how his shoulders stepped to the outside, and he did a 4/4 yield away from me, and he kind of crossed his feet away from me there. Now right now he has his eyes looking to the outside here, and that is not what I am That's not what I'm looking for. I want his nose tipped in here towards this inside shoulder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tip his nose in, and I'm going to do that by lifting this rope back towards his hock area and tipping his nose in towards me. So whether or not I use my left or right hand, it doesn't really matter. This is just going to be kind of your own preference on what is most comfortable for you to be able to hold everything. But the key is going to be keeping your hand down by your waist and keeping your hand low doing this. And as for this nose in, you're going to control his back feet when you're doing this too. So you see how as I tip his nose in, I yield his hindquarters out to the outside, and you see how his inside foot here is landing right where the inside foot on this side is exiting from or leaving the ground. I don't want that when I'm lunging, because that means he is not collecting up and he's not in the right body frame. I want his nose tilted into me, and I'm looking for this inside rear foot to land right where the outside front foot is leaving the ground. So I'm going to ask him here to tip that nose back a little bit, and I'm probably going to have to ask him to move forward a little bit too at the same time. So I'm going to try and like squish him together and get him to collect his body up as we're doing this. And you can see now he is reaching up underneath himself with his hindquarters here. He's starting to use his body more in the correct manner like he's supposed to versus before. So right here he's getting where he is kind of pushing on me with his ribs here. So I had to kind of tap him on the ribs to be like, hey, I need you to not push on me there. I need you to stay to the outside. And then if he tries to continue to pull on me with his nose, I'm just kind of taking my finger here and asking him to step to the outside. So I have quite a bit of communication going on with him, even though it doesn't really look like I'm doing much at the moment, probably, if you're watching me. But there is a lot that I'm kind of doing with him right now that he can feel, and my body is telling him that you probably cannot really tell unless I were to point it out to you. So now he is in the frame that I'm looking for. His back foot's landing where that front foot's leaving. His nose is tipped in towards the circle here, and his ribs are starting to bend towards the outside. There. Okay. So that is the body frame that I'm searching for when I'm going to lunge my horse. The other thing is my body position has to be correct too. So when I'm doing this, I want to make sure that my shoulders are either going the same direction as his shoulders are. So we're kind of like walking next to each other, and I'm walking in a smaller circle next to him, but I'm still staying behind his shoulder. Or I'm going to do it where my shoulders are pointing directly in front of his nose. So my energy is pointing directly in front of his nose here. And the reason I want to do that is if I were to change my body position and turn my shoulders so they're facing him, which is what the majority of people do when they lunge horses, is they turn their body language and they're completely facing the horse like this, and they'll take a step towards the horse every single time. It's constantly telling your horse to go forward, and it's putting energy on your horse, and it doesn't make them responsible for their own feet. If I want to hold my horse accountable for his own feet and to be responsible to make sure that he stays in the gait that I ask of him, and up to him whether or not he stays doing what I ask or not. And if he doesn't, I don't want to have to continuously tell him that, yes, I'm asking you to keep walking and walking. So by me facing him, that's exactly what I'm doing, is I'm constantly telling him, yep, keep walking. Where if I turn my body here, he has the option of stopping because there's no energy pushing him forward at this point. if you have a horse that's, I guess, maybe not as used to lunging as he is, you'll sometimes get where you can see the difference in their body language. Is if you were to turn your body like this, they will start walking a lot faster. Well, I guess maybe not a lot faster, but you'll notice that their momentum and stuff picks up when you turn your body like this and you get your energy facing them, versus if you turn your shoulders a little bit and take the energy off of them. Actually, he kind of just did it here. It was very subtle that he did it, so I'll see if he'll do it again. But when I had my shoulders facing him and I was asking him, or I had my energy going towards him, he kind of picked up his walk a little bit faster there, and he had a little bit more of a forward go to him. Now watch, and I'll see if he does anything when I change my body position here. All right, so here he actually did. He slowed his walk down here a little bit here when I turned my body language and I turned my shoulders to face this way versus me going like this and walking towards him. Yeah, you got to get off me. So you see how his walk is kind of a little bit faster here? It's very minimal, but it is slightly faster. Versus when I turn my body this way, he gets a little bit more relaxed about everything there. And actually he's starting to drop his head a little bit more too. So that is something to think about as well. And is the reason I kind of lunge my horse this way, is I'm looking for the body position to be correct. And I need my body position to make him responsible for his body to stay in the correct position, and he has to maintain his body in that correct position on his own. So he is right now being a little bit distracted right now, but he is the type of horse that he's very smart and he gets bored very easily unless you're changing things up on him. So he does really well if you're challenging him and you change stuff up a lot, and he likes a lot of like game type things. And so doing that with him, he's going to be a lot happier about. You'll notice he kind of pins his ears a little bit here. This gets kind of boring for him, like to kind of do the same thing over and over again. This isn't very exciting for him to do. And when I had gotten him, he was very disrespectful, and he had a really bad attitude about pushing people around and not respecting people. He was super food aggressive and just was bad along those lines. So it took a lot of work on my part to get him to respect me and to fix that issue. He is holding his body in the correct frame right now. I'm going to ask him to come up to a trot here. So he's being a little bit lazy, so I'm going to get after him a little bit there. All right, good boy. I'm asking his hindquarters to come up. Okay, good boy. Good licking and chewing. I like that. I want his hips to the outside so he's not pushing on me. He is trying to kind of look to the outside, and he's kind of pulling on me here. So I'm going to bump his nose because he knows better than to pull on me here. But it's been a while since I've kind of worked with him, so he's a little bit rusty at the moment. There you go. So I'm going to just kind of bump on him, be like, hey, I need you to not pull on me. Good boy. There you go. So now his hindquarters is reaching up underneath him really nice. He's holding that shoulder up really nice. And he's got a nice little trot going here. The only bad thing is I wish his ears were forward a little bit. And he's actually getting his head down, and the head is a good indicator. It tells you two things. It'll tell you whether or not your horse is using its body in the correct manner, and it will also tell you whether or not anxious or has high anxiety or comfortable. So if their head is up, that is the two things it's telling you. It either tells you that your horse is not comfortable, it has high anxiety going on, or it's telling you that it is not biomechanically using its body correctly. So his head's fairly level at the moment. If I were to actually take my hand down lower here and tip his nose in a little bit more, he'll actually start to stretch his head down, stretch towards the ground here. And that is another exercise I teach my horses as well, is to to stretch to the ground. Good boy. And as he stretches and drops his head, I let him out on a circle and let his circle become bigger. And that's his reward for lowering his head and then maintaining it there. Good boy. There, good boy. All right, so if I yield the hindquarters, good nugget. So that is how I go about lunging my horse, and that's the purpose of it. I do it at the canter too. I guess I should demonstrate that as well. So when I do it here, I'm not going to start them in the canter such a small circle as what I did with the walk and trot. I let them out a little bit further, but they have to be able to maintain that body frame really well and hold themselves up and together really well before I'm even going to be able to get to the point of being able to ask them to go into that canter. Okay, so you see he's doing well here. His shoulder's nice and up. He's not leaning to the inside of the circle. So if I were to ask him to come on up into the canter, I'm going to push him forward. Good. All right, good boy. And you see how he's holding that shoulder up nice. He's reaching up underneath himself with the hindquarters. Keep going. Good. And for this size of the circle, for him to do this, this is not easy for a horse to go in a circle this small, especially for a horse of his size. And he is, like I said, he's only 3. So for him to be able to hold his body position the way he does takes quite a bit of talent for a horse to be able to do that, especially at his age that he is, and just to be able to physically be able to do that. It's not easy for horses to be able to. So it takes quite a bit of work for them to do that, unless you might have a really well-bred horse that they can easily do that. When they come out of the womb, they can, lope like that or something along those lines, that they might be that well bred and it's just comes normal to them. But a lot of horses, they really have to work at getting themselves that good to make it look that effortless and to hold their body position like that. So this is all work that he has done and has been, let's see, this way. I can't remember which way is his worst way. I'm going to guess it's this way because he doesn't seem to flex as good this way. So I'm going to guess that he doesn't quite lope as good to the left here. I remember. All right, so if I were to ask him to come on up to the canter, good boy. And you see how much harder it is, how he didn't start quite as smooth with the hindquarters there. Good boy. And then as he's cantering too, I'm going to put a little beat here on my rope towards his hindquarters. So I'm going to, every time the inside rear foot lands, I'm going to go boom, 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 and put a little feel on my rope back towards his hock. So it's going to be like a boom, boom every time that the outside rear foot hits the ground. And that's going to help him maintain his shape and frame that he needs to stay in order to keep that shoulder raised and him collected in the correct body frame and maintain everything correctly there. So that is just an explanation of how I go about lunging my horses, why I do it that way. And to me, if I'm able to teach my horse this from the very beginning and not have to reteach them something that they've learned wrong, I'm leaps and bounds ahead of being able to do it like this versus letting them lunge around me, run around me, drop their shoulder, not canter in a very correct manner, and crossfire, etc. So if he were to be crossfiring or on the wrong lead or something like that, I'm going to stop my horse and I'm going to correct them to fix that versus letting them just run around and try and get energy out. To me, it's important that my horse is cantering in the circle and they're using their body correctly, they're on the correct lead, and so on and so forth. So when I do this, I'm having my horse's attention on me, their nose is tipped into me, here paying attention to what I'm asking of them to do. I can't have them looking to the outside. I need them to be focused on me and what I am going to be asking of them to do next. So again, this is just the way that I tend to lunge. It is extremely different. I understand that from the way that most people do. And like I said, that's perfectly fine. Everybody has their own way of doing it. This is just the way I have learned how to do it, and it makes sense to me. And I just kind of explain the reasoning why I do it this way, and that I have seen really good results by doing it this way. So that is just kind of the way I lunge, and we'll keep going on and follow along for other exercises and things that I do with my horses and prepping them to get them ready to go under saddle. So we'll talk to you guys later. Thanks.